The anime starts on a cold and windy night, but forget about enjoying the scenery because a castle is under full-blown attack. Explosions light up the walls as heavy artillery slams into them. While the guards scramble to fight back, the enemy makes a run for it with a briefcase stolen straight from the vault. The guards give chase, firing shots, determined to stop the thief. But when they finally corner the criminal, they probably think she's about to surrender, but nope, this little menace has other plans. With a simple hand gesture, she summons a bunch of C4 behind her and blows up the wall like it's a casual Tuesday. Before the dust even settles, a chopper swoops in, spitting bullets at the guards. She hops on board like she's in an action movie, but just as you think she's done, she waves her hand again and boom, summons a missile the size of half the chopper. She sends it straight toward the castle. As the chaos unfolds, two mean-looking guys stroll past a fallen guard, not even pretending to care. One of them whips out a sniper rifle, taking aim at the brat in the chopper. Just as he's about to pull the trigger, the wind starts howling and a voice cries out from the clouds like some dramatic final boss entrance. The wind gets so strong it pops the briefcase open, sending a deck of cards flying through the air like confetti. The cards scatter in every direction. 1 month later in the city, some kid named Finn stands near a fountain plotting his next move like he's some criminal mastermind. He casually strolls past his first victim, tosses a snack at a man's feet, and as the dog startles the poor guy, Finn swipes his expensive wristwatch with the finesse of a seasoned thief. He doesn't stop there, he runs after the dog, pretending to chase it, and in the process robs two guys smoking by the road. At this point, he's basically a professional. After finishing his little crime spree, he grabs the dog's leash, hands it back to the kid who owns it, and even sneaks a lollipop into the boy's hand like some kind of discount Robin Hood. Back at the orphanage, Finn overhears the landlord giving the manager, Lindsay, an eviction notice. They've got until spring to pack up and leave because the landlord has bigger plans for the land. Finn heads to the backyard where the kids beg him to play with them, but he brushes them off, acting all busy. As he walks away, he catches a glimpse of Lindsay standing by the window, looking stressed about the kid's future. Not that Finn has a solution, he's too busy figuring out how to scam his way into money. Desperate for cash, Finn hits up a pawn shop to trade his stolen goods, but the pawn guy basically laughs in his face. Turns out stolen junk doesn't fetch a high price. Who knew? He even tries to pawn his limited edition t-shirt, but the guy only seems interested in a mysterious playing card Finn has. Finn snatches it back, saying he won't trade it, even though he has no clue if it's valuable. Then, in a stroke of pure genius, he gets the idea to gamble. He heads straight for Bellland, the anime version of Las Vegas, and walks into a casino like he owns the place. Against all odds, he actually wins a few rounds. The card he refused to sell seems to be his lucky charm. And just as he's basking in his victory, some smug-looking dude sits across from him and introduces himself as the Lucky Lunchman, which sounds like a failed superhero name. He tells Finn his luck is just beginner's luck and that real luck looks a lot different. Meanwhile, in the casino's control room, a creepy dude munches on candy while rolling blood-stained marbles across the floor like a certified lunatic. Back at the table, Finn keeps pushing his luck against Lucky Lunchman until he inevitably loses everything. Turns out Finn's not so lucky after all. While Lucky Lunchman moves on to the slot machines, Finn, being the sneaky little thief he is, tries to swipe a familiar-looking card from him. Just as he reaches for it, a glass of champagne spills on him. Busted. Lucky Lunchman catches him and asks what he wants. Finn, with no shame, asks to be his apprentice. Lucky Lunchman shows off his lucky gloves, which supposedly make him win every time. Finn, of course, tries to steal them, but before he can, a man bumps into him, triggering the slot machine, which lands on a jackpot. Security notices and immediately wants to escort Lucky Lunchman to the VIP section. Not wanting to go alone, he drags Finn along. Inside the VIP room, Lucky Lunchman complains about the poor air conditioning and ugly decor. The manager doesn't care and asks security to search him, suspecting his luck isn't natural. Before they can touch him, instantly one security guard trips on his own shoelaces, crashes into another, and accidentally shoves a guy out the window. Meanwhile, another guard, clearly done with everyone's nonsense, pulls out a playing card and activates it. The manager steps in, but his arm is instantly turned into marbles. Then his head follows suit. So much for job security. The surviving guard threatens Lucky Lunchman, saying that while the card protects its owner, his family isn't so lucky. Completely terrified, Lucky Lunchman hands over the card. Before things can settle, another player barges in demanding the card, and now it's a full-blown battle. Finn watches in disbelief, realizing everyone here has cards like his. Lucky Lunchman tries to escape in the chaos, but because fate loves irony, he trips over a gun and accidentally gets himself shot, so much for being lucky. Desperate, he begs for his card back, but instead his head gets turned into marbles. Not a great day for him. The new guy, Player 2, tells Finn to leave. Finn, pretending to trip, steals Player 1's card before bolting. By the time Player 1 realizes what happened, Finn is already outside swiping car keys from an unsuspecting driver. He jumps into the stolen car and speeds off, but of course, Player 1 is right behind him. Player 2 joins the chase, ramming into them, causing a spectacular explosion. Finn, somehow still alive, stumbles out of the wreckage. Player 2, looking half dead, also gets up and asks for the card. Before Finn can respond, a marble smacks Player 2 in the head. Player 1, now royally pissed off, demands Finn hand over the card, but Finn, finally catching on, activates his own card. It transforms into a glove, and suddenly he's holding a gun. With the odds evened, he and Player 1 face off. Finn manages to win the shootout, proving that maybe, just maybe, he's got some real skill. But before he can celebrate, Player 2, who should definitely be dead, pulls a surprise comeback, aiming his gun at Finn. With guns aimed at each other, Player 2 asked Finn if he just happened to stumble into this mess by accident or if he knew about the card. Typical Finn, clueless as ever, he puts his gun down and grabs Finn like a ragdoll, demanding him to pull the trigger. Before Finn's brain can even process what's happening, he spots a car heading toward them, who uses vines to snatch Finn up like a helpless toddler. Finn wakes up to a cup of tea, which is the nicest thing to happen to him all day. A butler stands before him along with two others who look like they have better things to do. Finn scans the room, eyes catching some expensive-looking items, because of course his broke self would notice that first. The butler sits down like a man who controls the world and starts dropping knowledge about the X-playing cards and their insane powers. Turns out Finn didn't just randomly stumble into trouble, his card actually chose him. A terrible choice, honestly. There are 52 of these cards scattered across the kingdom, and some players are using them for evil. To fix this mess, King Julius ordered his people to discreetly collect all the cards. Finn, still struggling to keep up, asks what this has to do with him. The butler, probably questioning Finn's intelligence, explains that he now has a new job whether he likes it or not. The butler spills more tea. Player 1 is actually Bobby from the Klondike family, the biggest mafia in the kingdom. These guys don't play fair, and they'll do anything to get what they want. Then comes the magic word, money. Finn was barely listening until he heard how much they'd pay him. Suddenly he agrees without hesitation. Money really does talk, and Finn is all ears. Chris, aka Player 1, gets assigned as Finn's mentor. His first lesson, fashion. They head to the tailor's shop to get Finn some new clothes because, let's be honest, he dresses like someone who lost a bet. While browsing materials, Finn finally asks the important question, how the heck is Chris still alive after taking a marble to the head? Chris casually explains that his card makes him immortal when activated. Finn, still struggling to comprehend basic information, just nods along. The tailor presents a suit design which they accept without much thought, then head out for dessert. Meanwhile, the police arrive at a crime scene where a poor officer got murdered earlier. The detective examines the place when his rookie assistant runs up, looking like she just saw a ghost. The surviving officer claims their attacker wasn't human. The rookie emphasizes how weird things have been, but the detective, puffing on a cigarette like he's seen it all, says that when weird stuff happens, they call weird people. Over at the diner, Chris flirts shamelessly with a lady while Finn sits uselessly next to him. Their moment of peace is interrupted by some loudmouth customer bullying a waiter for spilling food. Finn, feeling heroic for once, confronts the jerk. The bully raises his hand to punch Finn, but Chris steps in, casually subduing the guy like he does this daily. Finn gets ignored as Chris apologizes on his behalf and goes back to flirting. Back at the orphanage, Finn's manager praises him for landing a good job. Finn, full of confidence for once in his life, promises to start making serious money so they won't have to worry anymore. He realizes the manager had been struggling to pay the landlord and vows to save the orphanage since they took him in when he had nothing. The manager, touched by Finn's determination, walks him to the door and gives him some wise advice. Finn, being Finn, probably forgets it instantly. Stop it! At 5 a.m. sharp, Chris pulls up, honking loud enough to wake the dead. Finn stumbles out, still half asleep, and hops in the car. Then he notices an earring and instantly realizes that Chris had some fun in the company car. Disgusted, Finn yells at him, but Chris, as usual, doesn't care. They get an update on their target, and Chris goes full focus mode. As they drive past some cops, the officers don't even bother stopping them, probably because they know Chris is too much trouble. They catch up to their target, a massive guy with skin like stone. Finn, using his one functioning brain cell, realizes it's the same waiter from last night. Chris instantly knows what's up. The guy has a powerful card. The hulking man jumps onto their car, kicking Finn aside like a discarded sock. Finn shoots, but surprise, surprise, the bullets do nothing. Chris slams the brakes, sending the dude flying into a concrete pillar. The rookie cop, still on the job, asks if they should chase after the remaining robbers. Her boss, knowing better, reminds her that special cases need special people. Just then, another player appears, standing ominously on top of the fallen truck. Back in the action, Finn tries to shoot the rock-skinned giant again. It's still useless, but at least he's persistent. Chris, thinking on his feet, grabs the brute and carries him away, already scheming up a way to take him down. In a move of pure genius, Chris drives straight into a river, drowning the guy. The brute, panicking, tries to land one last punch, breaking Chris's neck in the process. A moment of silence for Chris. Just kidding, he's immortal. The brute finally passes out, and his card appears in his hand. Finn, thanks to his own card's power, comes back to life and does the one thing he's actually good at, shooting through the car glass to help Chris escape. Back at Pinotial, the butler, who is clearly the boss here, gets a debriefing on how things went down. Meanwhile, Finn, standing outside, is deep in thought, probably wondering if he'll end up like the waiter. Chris, always one to lighten the mood, throws Finn a drink and welcomes him to high card. Finn, finally feeling like he belongs, accepts it like the dramatic fool he is. In his office, Bernard the butler calls Master Theodore to report on Finn's performance. The response? If Finn doesn't pull his weight, fire him! Bernard believes in Finn, but this is business and they have a reputation to maintain. No pressure, right? Chris and the gang gather around Finn, congratulating him on his first mission, but of course they remind him that he's the weakest link because his card is literally the two of spades, the lowest of the low. Finn, now officially the team's punching bag, just smiles awkwardly, pretending not to care. In an abandoned warehouse that looks like the perfect place for a cheap horror movie, a woman and her henchmen kneel before a flaming statue. They pray with all the intensity of ancient Yoruba villagers summoning Sango, except they probably smell worse. As they chant and bow, a mystical card drifts into the woman's hand, gifting her the power of fire. Now she's officially a human flamethrower. Meanwhile, Finn struts out of the tailor shop in his brand new suit, feeling like the main character he absolutely is not. As he admires his own reflection, he sees a young boy getting snatched right off the street. With zero hesitation and even less intelligence, Finn grabs a nearby scooter and speeds off in pursuit. He looks ridiculous, but at least he's committed. The kidnappers bark threats at the boy, telling him to shut up, which is funny because the kid wasn't even talking. They demand an apology from his dad and 10 million in compensation. They're acting so paranoid, it's like they're the ones being kidnapped. Before long, Finn shoots out their tires, making their car crash into a fire hydrant. As they scramble like headless chickens, Finn snatches the boy and escapes into a restaurant. Trying to start a conversation, Finn attempts his best cool guy approach, but the kid stares straight into his soul and tells him he should have minded his business. This child has the emotional warmth of a frozen brick. They go back and forth, but Finn might as well be arguing with a wall. Before they can get too deep into their debate, the kidnappers storm in and immediately accuse Finn of being the real kidnapper. Finn doesn't even get time to argue before they start swinging. The boy, in peak rich kid behavior, casually strolls to the counter and orders a cup of tea while Finn fights for his life. The police finally show up, arresting the kidnappers, but also detaining Finn because he stole a scooter and they need a witness. Locked up in the detention room, Finn tries lecturing the boy about life, but the kid shuts him down immediately, basically telling him that his opinion is as useful as a broken umbrella. Then, as if Finn's dignity hadn't taken enough hits, the kid just leaves, and Finn, being the genius he is, sneaks past the guards and follows. When the rookie cop realizes they both vanished, she's ready to cause a scene, but the detective tells her to let it go. Finn and the kid apparently have plot armor. Meanwhile, back in their jail cell, the kidnappers Carter and Jake are sulking like toddlers who just got their toys taken away. Their misery is short-lived because their sister Nyx pulls off a jailbreak by melting the cell gate like she's some kind of discount Azula from Avatar. Finn, still tailing the kid, keeps trying to make conversation, but gets ignored so many times it's actually impressive. Eventually he gives up and walks away, but not before returning with 2 hot dogs. He hands one to the boy as a peace offering because apparently food is the only way to communicate with him. They sit by a stairway and Finn shares how he lost his family in an accident and got amnesia. The kid listens, but honestly he still looks like he couldn't care less. On their way home, Finn notices they're heading in the same direction. He suggests using the subway, but the boy admits he's never been on a train before. Finn immediately starts teasing him for being a spoiled trust fund baby. The fun is cut short when a kid bumps into Finn and accidentally smears ice cream on his pristine new suit. Finn reacts like he just got stabbed. The kid, now terrified, sits on the floor, but the rich boy comforts him while Finn sulks like a dramatic diva. Nyx and her brothers step onto the train. Nyx, clearly enjoying her fire-themed villain arc, activates her card and sets the carriage ablaze, demanding that the boy call his father. Unfortunately for them, the boy doesn't even have his dad's number. Nyx threatens to roast him alive, hoping that'll make his father show up, but the boy doesn't even flinch. Finn, however, is sweating bullets because fire and expensive suits do not mix. The boy finally turns to Nyx and asks what she even wants. Finn tries stepping in, but one of the brothers shoves him aside like an inconvenience. Finn and the boy end up chained in the warehouse where Nyx and her brothers are back to worshipping their creepy fire statue. Luckily for Finn, he's got sticky hands and picks the locks like it's just another Tuesday. Just as they're about to make their escape, the brothers get into a heated argument trying to figure out why Finn is even involved. The confusion buys him just enough time to activate his card and shoot down a pile of junk, trapping the brothers. He then turns his sights on Nyx, but every bullet he fires gets incinerated. The smoke blinds him, making his already bad aim even worse. As Nyx prepares to barbecue him, Chris crashes through the wall in a car like some action movie reject. He steps out looking completely unbothered and tosses a briefcase full of cash at the boy. The boy, now revealed to be named Leo, opens it to reveal $1 million. As Carter and Jake lose their minds over the money, Leo pulls out his own card and activates it. The briefcase full of cash suddenly transforms into a massive bazooka. His card lets him turn money into anything of equal value. Nyx, realizing this kid is actually dangerous, hurls a giant fireball at him, but Leo counters by firing the bazooka, causing a massive explosion. Finn just stands there stunned, probably questioning all his life choices up to this point. As the dust settles, Leo casually picks up Nyx's card, but the massive fire statue they had been worshipping starts to topple over. Finn, in a rare moment of heroism, shoves Leo out of the way, saving him from being squashed. Instead of thanking him, Leo just dusts himself off and tells Finn that nobody asked for his help, before slapping a bandage on his face like an irritated parent. Back at Pinnacle, Bernard finally explains that Leo is actually the manager of the entire operation. Basically, he's Finn's boss, which makes all of Finn's earlier interactions with him 10 times more embarrassing. Finn is in shock, realizing that the rich kid he's been annoying this whole time is actually in charge. Wendy wakes up after dreaming about her past, remembering how she trained with the sword. She checks the time, panics, and rushes out, bumping into people like an uncoordinated deer. Despite all the effort, she still misses the bus. Eventually, she reaches work, extremely late as usual, just in time to see Finn stealing Chris's client, Mr. Apple, a CEO. Wendy comments that Finn seems to be a better salesman than Chris, but Chris argues. Finn notices Wendy suddenly appearing out of nowhere and starts questioning her, but she just ignores him like he doesn't exist. After closing the deal, Finn brags about his win, but Chris, being the shameless glory thief he is, tries to take credit. The only thing Chris ever taught Finn was how to talk to women, and even that advice was questionable at best. After work, they head to a pub for food and drinks. Finn won't shut up about signing a CEO even though he doesn't even know what a CEO does. Wendy, on the other hand, is busy drowning herself in beer like a seasoned warrior. Leo brings up Chris's terrible punctuality, which is against company rules. Right on cue, Chris strolls in late, completely ignoring the irony. He reminds Finn of the company's taboos, including the most important one, never let Wendy unsheath her sword. Finn, being the genius he is, orders a giant cup of ice cream. Wendy tries to order more beer, but the staff wisely refuses. Leo and VJ head home, leaving Chris to babysit a drunk Wendy. He and Finn struggle to carry her home while she rants nonsense, acting like an entirely different person. The next morning, Wendy wakes up almost late for work again. This time she dodges obstacles like an Olympic athlete and actually catches the bus. At work, only VJ is present. He tells her that Finn is with a customer on a test drive, while Chris is on a mission. They receive a call from Chris about a bank robbery involving a player. Chris tries handling it alone, but gets shot while saving civilians. Wendy decides to ignore orders and rushes in to help with VJ. Finn, waiting at a red light with his customer, sees Chris chasing the robbers. Like the professional he is, Finn dumps his customer and speeds off. The robbers try escaping but get blocked by VJ, who uses vines to trap them with Wendy right behind him. The robbers pull out their guns, but Wendy activates her card, using her sheathed sword to take them down effortlessly while VJ rescues the hostage. Something feels off. The hostage turns out to be another player and takes VJ hostage with a knife. He reveals his ability to multiply, and his clones overwhelm Wendy. Realizing she's outnumbered, Wendy unsheathes her sword. In an instant, she slices through all the clones. VJ is relieved, but his relief vanishes when the sword takes over Wendy, transforming her into LAP. VJ immediately alerts Chris. Love P destroys the remaining clones. The original player, unable to keep up, collapses from exhaustion. Just as Love P is about to finish him, VJ intervenes. The robber faints just from seeing the sword. VJ distracts her while Leo, thinking he's a genius, drops a giant safe from a chopper, believing it will trap her. Predictably, it doesn't. She jumps and slices the chopper, sending Leo and the pilot crashing to the ground. VJ saves them with his vines. As she prepares to attack them, Chris pulls up and Love P sees him as an unlimited meat supply since he can't die. She immediately goes on a slicing spree, impaling Chris repeatedly, not even giving him a moment to breathe. He somehow grabs the sword, using the opportunity to introduce Finn, the newest member of High Card. Finn, thinking he's a sharpshooter, fires at her. She deflects the bullet with ease. Realizing she's too fast, Finn actually uses his brain for once. He aims at the sword and shoots it out of her hand. Love P loses her powers, but warns Finn that next time they meet, he better not still look like a scrawny teenager. That night, Wendy dreams of her father mocking her terrible cooking. He tells her not to walk the path of solitude like he did, wishing she would find a friend to rely on. She wakes up to find Finn sitting next to her. She apologizes for losing control, but Finn reassures her that if it happens again, he'll stop her. At that moment, Wendy realizes her father's wish has finally come true. Finn walks out, suddenly remembering something important. He abandoned his customer in the car in the middle of the road. The next day at work, Chris notices the place is sparkling clean. He assumes Finn cleaned everything, but to his shock, it was Wendy. Not only that, but she even brought breakfast. Sadly, she cooks like a toddler, mixing sand. The cops and detectives storm the crime scene like they are in a TV show no one asked for. They reveal the robber's name is John Doe, a member of the notorious Klondike family. That name alone sounds like a guy who doesn't want to exist. At the station, some ladies report that Chris was in the bank flirting instead of minding his business. The rookie detective, fresh out of whatever academy produced this mess, storms up to the captain demanding to know why Chris isn't being interrogated. She is ignored like an email from a scammer, but she keeps going, ranting about how every case involving employees of Pinochle Automobiles gets mysteriously dismissed. No one cares, but she insists on giving a passionate speech about justice, while the rest of the station collectively decides to pretend she's invisible. Another detective enters, announcing that John Doe refuses to talk unless he speaks to Captain Young. Instead, they send in the rookie. The guy literally asked for steak and got served plain rice. John realizes he has no choice but to talk to the rookie, so he makes a deal. protection in exchange for everything he knows about the Klondike family. The rookie agrees, probably thinking this is her big moment when in reality she's just a pawn in a much bigger game. Meanwhile, Captain Young sits in a squad car calling Master Theodore like he's some secret informant. Theodore gives vague warnings about how the Klondike boss is a demon in human skin and will destroy Young without a second thought. Basically a pep talk, but from a horror movie villain. At Penachel, Finn is doing his usual business, acting like a half-functional member of society. The rookie detective watches the employees like she's in a spy movie, expecting to uncover something shady, but surprise, surprise, nothing. She's out here chasing ghosts while Finn just goes about his day. Captain Young arrives at a Klondike family event and bumps into Bobby, the marble guy. This dude is still salty about losing to Finn, which is hilarious considering Finn isn't exactly a genius. Young mocks him, saying even a rookie like Finn took him down, which makes Bobby lose his mind. He threatens to marble Young, which is about as threatening as being hit with a pillow. Young shrugs it off and keeps walking while Bobby has a mini meltdown. The event is packed with high-class individuals from businessmen to musicians, all pretending they aren't in the middle of a crime syndicate gathering. Then the big boss himself, Ban Klondike, steps out. He is offered a glass of champagne but goes for a snack instead because he doesn't drink. A crime lord who prefers snacks over booze, truly a man of culture. Meanwhile, Finn hears someone running outside. Thinking it's a Klondike member, he puts his card in play and goes after them, only to find the rookie detective pointing a gun at him. Back at the event, Ban starts talking about humanity and mankind like he's some deep philosopher. He thanks important people for helping him reach his position and raises his glass for a toast when his subordinate, Tilt, whispers something in his ear. The rookie drags Finn to the station, ignoring his attempts to explain himself. The man could be screaming that the world is ending, and she would still be determined to arrest him. Back at the event, a man is brought on stage with a bag over his head. Ban dramatically removes it to reveal John Doe. The guy looks like he regrets every decision in his life. Ban asks why he betrayed the family, and John says he knows he'll never be forgiven for losing a card. Ban responds with a terrifying smile, the kind that makes you rethink your life choices. On the road, as the rookie drives with Finn, still trying to explain, a bus crashes into their car. Because why not add another problem to Finn's day? Ban gently places his hand on John's head. A second later, John's head starts twisting like a cheap bottle cap. Finn, dazed from the crash, notices the bus levitating. He yells at the rookie to uncuff him. She finally listens, and they both jump out of the car just as the bus slams down, crushing it. That was way too close, even for Finn's dumb luck. Meanwhile, Ban is still giving his villainous speech while John's head continues to rotate like a malfunctioning toy. The audience watches in horror, but Ban just keeps talking like this is some TED Talk. Finn sees someone approaching and immediately puts his card in play, aiming at a woman. He takes a shot, but she uses telekinesis to block it with a trash can. She then uses the same power to strangle the rookie and point Finn's gun at her. Finn is utterly useless in this situation and begs her to stop, but she ignores him and pulls the trigger. Back at the event, Ban finally decides his speech has gone on long enough. John's head completes its final spin and pops off like a cork from a champagne bottle. The audience is traumatized, but Ban casually gives a toast and pours his drink onto John's lifeless body. The man really knows how to set the mood. The telekinetic woman misses the shot and warns Finn and the rookie to stay out of family business before leaving like some overpowered anime villain. As Ban exits the event, he runs into Young and they exchange words. Young asks about the chaos in Foreland and what went down at the castle. Ban cryptically replies that history is repeating itself and asks if Young doesn't want to watch the kingdom burn. He warns Young to watch out for Theodore, saying that man could betray him at any moment. Before leaving, Young asks if they can't just sit down for drinks like old times. Ban reminds him that he doesn't drink. The man stays committed to his snack-based lifestyle. The rookie detective spirals into a full mental breakdown, trying to make sense of everything. Finn tells her to back off if she wants to stay safe, but she insists on doing her job. As she tries to detain him again, she suddenly realizes he's already handcuffed her. He drops the key just out of her reach and tells her to cool down for a bit. She screams in frustration, trying to grab it, but fails. The next morning, the rookie reports everything to the captain. They sit in the squad car outside Finn's workplace. The captain casually flips through Finn's file before telling her to drive to the station. On the way, she tells a long emotional story about why she became a cop. The detective listens, looking as uninterested as humanly possible, and lights a cigarette. Then, like it's no big deal, he tells her that John Doe, the man she was in charge of, was found lifeless earlier that morning. She has officially taken another loss. Meanwhile, the Klondike Mafia members gather in a dimly lit room. A higher-ranking member walks in and tells them that John's death was necessary. They all nod like mindless drones, completely unfazed. A fancy cruise ship is sailing in the middle of the ocean, and some auctioneer is up there running his mouth about Forland's history. Apparently, ages ago, some sea monsters attacked the place, but then a mage popped up with a kid who was the real king. The people formed an army of 52 warriors, gave them magic cards, and told them to handle business. Spoiler alert, they failed. So the king had to pull an ultimate Uno move, using all the cards to wipe out the enemies. Now, one of those legendary cards is up for auction. Leo sits in the front row looking ready to throw hands for it, while across from him some mean-looking twig of a guy is eyeing it too. While everyone enjoys the cruise, some TV presenter is busy interviewing Norman, the CEO of Who's Who car manufacturing company. Norman, in all his glorious delusion, demands to be called king. When asked why he's even at the auction, he gives some nonsense about not being able to resist treasure, but let's be real, he wants the card. Meanwhile, Finn and the crew are chilling in their cabin watching Norman make a fool of himself on TV. They start discussing their mission, to swap the auction card with a fake one. Wendy reminds everyone that Norman's bodyguard and secretary are both players, so they need to be extra careful. Just as things get serious, Finn, in his infinite weakness, starts throwing up because apparently a little ocean movement is too much for him. Leo walks in and sees Finn in his pathetic state. Immediately considering kicking him off the mission, Chris, ever the overly confident mentor, vouches for Finn, saying he'll take full responsibility if anything goes wrong. Somehow that convinces Leo and they move forward with the plan. Leo returns to his seat as random rich people bid on overpriced junk. Finn, still looking like a half-drowned rat, gets moving. He stumbles into a supervisor, snatches his key, and tosses it to VJ, who is disguised as a waiter. VJ, being the smooth operator he is, hides the key in a drink. Wendy then picks up the drink and jumps down to a lower deck, where she executes her Oscar-worthy performance, accidentally spilling the drink all over a security guard. She apologizes dramatically and offers her cabin's shower to clean up. While the guy is busy feeling special, Chris strolls by and grabs the key like it's nothing. VJ, moving through the kitchen, picks up a potato because obviously potatoes are key to all great heists. Since he's running late, Wendy distracts the guard by offering another drink. VJ, probably the only actually competent member of this team, finally gets the security card. As the auction continues, Chris enters the vault but gets stopped for a security check. The guards demand to see his security card, and for a moment it looks like he's about to get caught. Then, right on cue, VJ drops the card into his hand from the vent above. Chris walks in like he owns the place, pushes the case holding the card out, and hops into the elevator. VJ hacks the cameras so nobody sees Chris switch the real card with the fake one. Back at the auction, Leo looks like he's about to pass out from stress, so VJ hands him a drink. Just when things seem to be running smoothly, Norman's secretary whispers something to him. Suddenly, Norman pauses the auction and struts off to the restroom, acting shady. Right after that, an electric surge blasts through the elevator, cutting the lights. Norman's oversized, steroid-abusing bodyguard appears and launches an electric punch at Chris, who barely dodges. Unfortunately, the fake card gets fried in the process. Chris, knowing he's outmatched, uses his real card and starts fighting. Leo realizes something's wrong when he loses communication with Chris. He calls out to Wendy, but she's too busy being absolutely wasted to be of any use. Finn, the sickly baby bird that he is, volunteers to help because nothing says hero like a guy who can't stand without puking. Finn, now on the scene, opens the elevator and aims at the bodyguard, but immediately hesitates because he almost throws up again. The bodyguard grabs him like a sack of potatoes. Meanwhile, at the auction, Leo is in a bidding war with Norman, throwing around ridiculous amounts of money. Chris, realizing that nothing is going according to plan, throws the cart carrying the card out of the elevator. Finn, proving once again that he's the team's biggest liability, tries to chase after the cart but trips and lands face first onto Leo, throwing up all over him. This absolute disaster of a move causes Leo to lose focus, letting Norman win the auction with a bid of $10 million. Right before he can get too comfortable, a chopper appears out of nowhere. A member of the Klondike Mafia steps out and uses her telekinesis to lift the entire cart along with a chunk of the ship's floor right out of there. Norman, watching his victory get snatched away, gets hit with the brutal realization that money is useless when the other guy has actual superpowers. They both look like characters ripped straight from a Game of Thrones episode. The next day, the news is all over the failed auction, covering how it got hijacked in the most dramatic fashion possible. Leo and his team sit around arguing over how everything went wrong, each realizing that they all contributed to this absolute mess. Norman, sitting in his office, is on the verge of a full-blown tantrum. The Klondike Mafia stole his moment of glory, and to make matters worse, the news doesn't even mention that he outbid his rival. His ego, shattered beyond repair, leaves him sulking like a child who just lost his favorite toy. A girl walks down the street complaining to her friend about some loser hitting on her. Then, boom, she stumbles upon Chris, the human version of a pickup line generator. He drops one so smooth that she actually likes it, but then she ruins his day by saying she's not into playboys. Just when Chris is about to recover from the insult, Finn, the walking disaster, appears out of nowhere and tries to steal from her. He gets rewarded with a face full of pepper spray. Good. The girl, clearly running on a different level, pulls out a mysterious card and dangles it in front of them like they're stray dogs chasing scraps. She makes them hold hands and then takes off running, leaving them stuck together like a bad buddy cop duo. Chris tries to chase after her, but surprise, Finn is still clinging to him, or so he thinks. Turns out the girl's card has some weird magic that's messing with them. Back at the bar, Finn and Chris sit at the counter, fuming about their humiliation. They decide to keep it a secret from Leo and Wendy because, let's be honest, they'd never hear the end of it. The bartender, who's enjoying this way too much, serves them ice cream with 2 straws, real mature. Just when they start thinking about how to find the girl, VJ casually shows them her location on his phone like it's no big deal. These 2 idiots wasted all that time when they could have just asked. They sprint out, determined to get their revenge, or at least their freedom. They track Chelsea, the escape artist, to a pool party. When she spots them, she asks what they want. And obviously, they want her to undo the card's magic. But she's having way too much fun making their lives miserable, so she runs. They try to chase her, but end up crashing into everything in sight because, oh yeah, they're still stuck together. From then on, their life turns into a ridiculous game of cat and mouse. They track Chelsea from a club to a wrestling ring to a train station, but she keeps slipping through their fingers. At this point, she's just showing off. Eventually, they drag themselves to a park, exhausted and still handcuffed by magic. Finn, the voice of reason for once, suggests they give up, but Chris refuses because he's got an important date the next day. Priorities, man. Suddenly, they hear someone's voice. It's Finn's customer, a CEO, and of course, the guy assumes Finn and Chris are holding hands because they're a couple. Finn panics and tries to explain, but it just makes things worse. So they do what any mature adults would do. They run for their lives. They finally corner Chelsea in an alley and demand answers. She tells them she doesn't have a home and is looking for her soulmate so she can use the card's power on them. Chris, trying his best to be wise for once, tells her she doesn't need magic for love. He even tries to bribe her, but she's not buying it. Instead, she decides to roast Chris alive by telling him exactly what kind of person he is. A lying, smooth-talking flirt. And the worst part? He agrees. Chris wants to keep chasing her, but Finn drags him to his house instead. They have dinner, and Chris, being the freeloader that he is, passes out on Finn's bed without a second thought. Early in the morning, Finn wakes up in a cold sweat after having a nightmare about a block of armor attacking him. He tells Chris about it, but Chris, professional sleep-deprived mess, doesn't care. They get no updates about Chelsea, so Chris finally gives up and tells Finn to forget everything that happened today. They head to the park where Chris confidently walks up to a girl. Finn assumes it's his date, but plot twist. It's his sister, Michelle. Finn, confused, tries to process this new information while Chris introduces him as a mere colleague. They start walking around the town, grabbing ice cream and snacks like they don't have a literal curse to deal with. Michelle, sharp as ever, notices they're holding hands and assumes they're dating. Finn naturally has a meltdown. He tries to tell her about the magic card, but Chris shuts him up real fast. At the store, Michelle excuses herself to go to the restroom. That's when Chelsea, who apparently has 500 side jobs, appears out of nowhere. She taunts Chris and Finn for still being stuck together and laughs at Chris for suddenly acting like a caring big brother instead of a flirt. Michelle comes back and asks if they're friends. Chelsea wants to say no, but Chris and Finn, for some reason, say yes. As they walk, Chelsea keeps trying to get Chris to flirt with her, but he ignores her. She even tries to expose him in front of Michelle, but it backfires. Michelle and Chelsea end up bonding, playing around and taking pictures together, and everything seems great until Michelle asks to go on the Ferris wheel. Chris, suddenly turning into the world's strictest older brother, refuses. Finn and Chelsea try to change his mind, but he doesn't budge. Then, out of nowhere, Michelle coughs up blood and collapses. Panic mode activates. Finn wants to call an ambulance, but Chris, looking like he just saw his soul leave his body, begs Chelsea to undo the magic. Chelsea, for once, takes pity and removes the curse. Chris immediately scoops up his sister and runs like a madman to find a cab. At the hospital, Michelle is rushed into surgery. Chris, desperate and unable to do anything, tries to force his way in, but the nurse stops him. Chelsea, in an uncharacteristically kind moment, grabs his hand and sticks them together to keep him from doing something stupid. Later, the doctor comes out with bad news. Michelle's condition is worse than they thought. She shouldn't have been going out in the first place. Michelle wakes up to find Chelsea and Finn watching over her. They're relieved to see her okay and check on her. She thanks her brother, saying he's all she has. Finn, realizing Chris is also an orphan, looks at him differently for the first time. Chris walks in pretending to be fine, but obviously he's relieved. Outside the hospital room, Chelsea asks Chris about Michelle's condition. He lies and says she'll be fine. Chelsea calls him out immediately. Chris, too exhausted to put on an act, explains that he only lies to protect people from pain. Finn wakes up drenched in sweat on a bus, having the same nightmare again. He looks around like a lost puppy, confused and pathetic. Mr. Apple storms into the store demanding to see Finn. Chris, trying to act cool, tells him Finn is on leave. Mr. Apple already dislikes Chris, probably because their last encounter didn't go so well. Chris attempts to explain, but Mr. Apple shuts him down. He doesn't care. He asks what Chris's deal is with Finn, and Chris, still trying to sound important, says he's like a big brother to him. Mr. Apple, completely unimpressed, makes it clear that he does not like Chris and walks out.
Emotional damage!
Meanwhile, Finn arrives outside the orphanage, clutching a bouquet of flowers like a lovesick fool. He watches as two kids fight over a book. Lindsay, the responsible one, steps in to stop them. One of the kids whines that he just wanted to play with Sam, but Sam refused like the antisocial gremlin he is. Sam snatches his book, which Finn picked up, and bolts away like he's being chased by a pack of wolves. Finn walks over to Lindsay, who explains that Sam is new and hasn't warmed up to anyone yet. Finn hands over the flowers, wishing Lindsay a happy birthday. Ban, the mafia boss, sits at a table having dinner with his crew, giving a dramatic speech about family like he's straight out of a Fast and Furious movie. One member is missing, but Ban doesn't seem too concerned. Probably because he already knows that guy is fish food. Sam hides in his room trying to read in peace when Finn barges in, acting like they're best friends. Finn, in his usual clueless way, says since Sam lives there now, they're family. Sam, who clearly wants none of this nonsense, shuts that idea down immediately. Finn ignores him and starts rambling about his own tragic backstory, and he talks about how tough it was when he first arrived, how the other kids tried to steal his card, and how Lindsay came to his rescue like some superhero. Finn, being the sentimental fool he is, treasures the card because it's the only thing he has left from his parents, and he tells Sam how Lindsay took care of him and only scolded him when he got into fights with the local troublemakers. He repeats some wise words Lindsay once told him, probably hoping it will make Sam open up, then shows Sam a secret hiding spot for his stuff before leaving. At dinner, the kids gather to celebrate Lindsay's birthday. Finn, trying too hard, presents his gift, saying he hopes to celebrate more birthdays together in the orphanage. Lindsay looks sad for a moment but forces a smile and thanks Finn. Then he sends Finn to help in the kitchen, probably to get rid of him for a bit. In the kitchen, Lindsay drops a bombshell. He tells Finn the kids don't know they have a deadline to leave the orphanage. He's trying to find good homes for them but doesn't want to give them false hope. Finn, still the delusional optimist, tells Lindsay not to worry. He proudly shows his bank account, saying when he gets a full-time job, he'll buy the orphanage. Lindsay looks at him, surprised by how much money Finn has, and immediately suspects he's up to something illegal. Instead of praising Finn for his ambition, Lindsay just tells him it would be better if he never came back at all.
本当はね、
君が帰ってこない方が僕にとってはずっと嬉しいことなんだ。
Finn's heart shatters into a million pieces. Back in the dining hall, the kids sing for Lindsay, and just as things seem peaceful, Bobby, the walking menace, struts in with a cold aura, singing in the most unsettling way possible. Finn instantly hates it. Bobby grabs Lindsay's gift and immediately recognizes the tailor shop it came from. Lindsay, thinking Bobby is just a friend, walks up for a handshake. Finn, having actual brain cells, blocks him and immediately puts his card in play. Bobby, unfazed, starts shooting marbles at Finn, causing chaos. Finn yells for Lindsay to get the kids outside while he deals with this unhinged lunatic. Bobby, enjoying the mayhem, keeps shooting, destroying the piano and setting the room on fire. Finn, fed up, leaps in with a kick to Bobby's head, but Bobby just stands there like it's nothing and then licks his own blood like some horror movie villain. Outside, Lindsay gathers the kids, but one of them notices Sam is missing. Inside, Finn starts having flashbacks of his childhood trauma but snaps out of it when he sees Sam run past him into the burning building. Ignoring Bobby, Finn rushes after Sam, who's risking his life for a book like a true nerd. Finn hands him a handkerchief to avoid inhaling smoke, and they try to escape, but Bobby blocks their way. Finn, out of bullets, shields Sam with his body while Bobby pelts him with marbles. Finn somehow manages to get Sam to the roof where the other kids are waiting below with a blanket. Sam, hesitant, gets a confidence boost from Finn and jumps. Finn, still acting like a reckless hero, charges at Bobby and lands a solid punch, knocking him out of the scene. Bobby, being the cockroach that he is, gets back up now with 2 cards. He activates them and suddenly he's juiced up with power. Finn, now completely useless, can do nothing but stare. Bobby grabs Finn by the neck and drags him into the flames, mocking his tragic past like a true villain. Just when Bobby is about to finish him off, a missile hits him. He survives the explosion, but before he can recover, he gets completely incinerated. A terrorist attack shakes the city, and Leo, the walking stress ball of a leader, tells the team to hunt down the players involved and snatch their cards. Somewhere else, a lady from the Klondike Mafia hops into a car with a high-profile citizen, and boom! The whole squad, including him, is nothing but dust in the wind. Meanwhile, Chris, the guy who actually does his job, chases down 2 shady-looking dudes, but one of them pulls out a card and disappears like tax money. And what is Finn, our so-called hero, doing? Sitting in his room looking like a rejected anime protagonist. The news goes crazy, announcing that a prince got unalived in the attack. The entire city is on lockdown because when a prince goes down, it's a big deal. A rookie detective tells Captain Young that witnesses said the explosion came out of nowhere, and she insists it has to do with those special people they should investigate. But the captain, who clearly enjoys ignoring obvious problems, tells her to drop it. She gets mad, but he shuts her down, saying some things are better left untouched, like expired milk or family drama. Meanwhile, Theodore visits the king at the prince's grave. The king gives one of those wise old ruler speeches, saying the cards are too powerful for humans and even worse when in the hands of idiots. He orders Theodore to stop the cards from causing more chaos and goes back to his royal nap time. Just as Theodore is about to leave, Ban appears out of nowhere like an unpaid bill. Theodore asks him why he had to unalive the prince just to make an entrance, and Ban, being the smug villain that he is, says the cards are meant to be played. He tells Theodore to hand over his cards, but Theodore, being stubborn, refuses. Ban does the classic mysterious guy exit. On his way out, Theodore tells his assistant to gather high card. Chris, probably exhausted from dealing with nonsense, leaves the hospital when he gets a call summoning him to the store. The team needs to gather, but they haven't been able to reach Finn for 2 weeks. Bernard, their boss, who probably regrets hiring half these people, lays out the mission, retrieve all the known cards. Wendy and VJ rush off to catch a train. Leo goes solo, and Chris is paired up with Finn, which would be great if Finn wasn't acting like a sad potato. On his way to Finn's place, Chris stops by the orphanage to take a look at what Finn lost. Meanwhile, Finn finally gets out of bed, splashes some water on his face, and just when he's about to sink back into self-pity, Chris knocks. Finn refuses to open the door or even acknowledge life, so Chris just sits outside waiting. He tells Finn that everyone understands he's grieving, but right now they need to work. Finn blames himself for what happened at the orphanage, and Chris, the only responsible adult here, consoles him. He tells Finn to take his time, but also reminds him that the mission isn't going to wait forever. After Chris leaves, Finn finally opens the door and sees a small piece of chocolate left for him, because nothing says, "Get your life together," like chocolate. Somewhere else, 2 Klondike Mafia members are sulking in a club, complaining that someone else took credit for their work. One of them, while pretending to read the menu, finds a card and realizes it's go time. As everyone is off doing their thing, Bernard enjoys a peaceful cup of tea on the balcony, probably pretending his team isn't a chaotic mess. Chris grabs a snack before boarding his train, but just when he's about to step in, he sees Finn running toward him, finally ready to do his job. On the train, they go over their targets. Finn opens up about how he blamed himself for the orphanage incident and why he stayed locked up like a hermit. But thanks to Chris, he feels better now. He says he's ready to move forward since he doesn't have a home anymore. Chris, confused, reminds him that he can always go back to Lindsay. Finn, being the walking tragedy that he is, says Lindsay doesn't want him back. Chris sighs and gives him advice that Finn probably won't understand until he's way older. Before they can reach their stop, a Klondike Mafia member blocks their exit. This guy controls metal, and he's been waiting to ambush them. He brags about how he got the info and introduces himself as Jasper. Chris, being unbothered, lets Jasper rant before telling him that his threats are pointless.
Damn it!
Jasper tries to intimidate them by saying his partner, Alex, will drop a giant rock on the tracks. If they don't hand over their cards, the train will crash, unaliving everyone on board. Finn, now fired up, calls him out for using innocent people as hostages. Jasper, clearly not the sharpest knife in the drawer, keeps talking long enough for Chris to figure out his entire plan. Chris calmly tells Jasper that his threats are useless because if the train crashes, Jasper himself is also done for. Jasper, now realizing how stupid he sounds, starts panicking. He uses his powers to rip apart the train carriage, but his time is running out. Alex, waiting ahead, drops the rock onto the tracks. Jasper, in full panic mode, tries to take out Finn, but Chris moves faster, shoving Finn into the river below. Just as things get messier, the train conductor slams the brakes, causing Chris to lose grip of Jasper. Jasper, realizing that he has to save himself, uses his powers to lift the tracks before the train derails. Chris, now free, jumps off to confront Alex, but before he can, Jasper grabs him with a chain, refusing to let go after the humiliation he just suffered. Meanwhile, Finn washes up on a riverbank, unconscious. Finn wakes up in bed with a dog, Roddy, aggressively licking his face like he owes it money. He looks around confused and sees the woman who saved him. She looks exactly like one of his past targets, Aya. His clothes are hanging on a chair, and before his dumb brain can panic, she tells him to relax because she picked up his card. Finn tries to talk, but his weak body refuses to cooperate. She tells him to breathe because he's still colder than a frozen turkey. She already figured out he works for Theodore and casually introduces herself as a high card. Meanwhile, the city is still in chaos after the train incident. Leo and the others watch the news, seeing reports about the destroyed train track. There's no word from Chris or Finn, but instead of using common sense, Leo says they have orders to stay put. Wendy and VJ try to argue, but Leo, always the rule follower, insists they can't move without permission. Clearly, Leo has never heard of free thinking. Aya picks up Finn's suit, impressed that it was made by wizardmen. She hangs it back up and returns his card. Finn, still recovering from his brain lag, asks what she means by being a high card. He wonders if there were others before his team. Trying to sound important, he says he's also a high card and was on a mission. Aya, unimpressed, shows him the news. Apparently the train track was destroyed, but the train itself was miraculously fine. Finn asks about Chris, and Aya seems surprised, recognizing the name. She asks if he means Chris Redgrave, and Finn confirms it. He tries to stand up like some action hero, but his body reminds him he's useless right now. Meanwhile, Chris is getting the VIP treatment in a barn, tied up and being used as a punching bag. Jasper, acting like an overgrown angry bird, demands to know where Chris's card is. Chris, who actually has a functioning brain, plays dumb. Jasper, ever the caveman, picks up a metal bar, reshaping it to show off. He promises to keep beating Chris until he talks. Meanwhile, Alex searches the crash site for Finn, but only finds footprints. He spots a few houses in the distance and decides to check them out. Aya, being a decent person, makes Finn a bowl of soup and tells him to drink up. Finn, who still can't believe someone is actually being nice to him, asks why she's helping him. She says she's tired of people dropping dead in front of her. Finn sips his soup like a child and asks about High Card. Aya tells him how she joined High Card 25 years ago. Back then, she was a top-tier agent carrying out missions flawlessly, but everything changed when her partner died on a mission. and Theodore in his usual heartless way told her to just move on. Suppressing her emotions for years, she started doubting how Theodore ran Pinochle. Then something big happened. Aya and Theodore visited a hospital where they found her partner Tyler with his son Chris, who was barely clinging to life. Tyler, desperate, wanted to use X-Hand and his card to save Chris. Theodore, being a textbook villain, refused, reminding them that High Card members couldn't use their powers for personal reasons. Tyler begged, but Theodore just ordered Aya to take his card. Desperate, Tyler used 4 cards at once to save his son, but in doing so, he sacrificed his own life. That moment broke Aya. She realized Theodore was a monster and left High Card wandering until she found a place to live. She explains to Finn that using X-Hand drains a player and using 4 cards at once took Tyler's life. She thought she was doing the right thing, but looking back, she isn't so sure. Back at headquarters, Leo hands over 2 recovered cards to Theodore. Theodore asks about Aya's card, and Leo explains that Chris and Finn are still missing. Theodore naturally tells him to go find them. Back at the barn, Chris, despite being tied up and beaten, still has enough attitude to ask about Alex. Jasper, enjoying his villain moment, says Alex is off looking for Finn's card and won't hesitate to finish him off. Chris, clearly done with the conversation, headbutts Jasper straight in the face. Finn, finally ready to leave, watches as Aya retrieves her card. Before she lets him go, she asks what he would have done in her situation. Finn, in true dumb fashion, gives such an unexpected answer that she actually laughs. Just as he's about to step outside, a loud noise stops them. They rush out and find Alex standing right there. Wasting no time, Alex launches an attack on Finn. Aya quickly hands Finn her card and charges at Alex. She activates her power, causing a massive boulder to crash into Alex. Wasting no time, she starts running around him, pulling more debris to attack, but Alex figures out how her power works and breaks free, moving to an open area. Finn, trying to be useful, shoots at Alex, but Alex blocks the attack and traps Finn using his earth-controlling powers. Alex sends a landslide toward Aya, breaking the ground around her. As Alex moves in for the final blow, he suddenly sees a car flying straight at him. He barely has time to react before Chris jumps out midair and kicks him in the face, sending him tumbling into the hole with Aya. Aya, deciding to end this, pulls an entire windmill down on Alex, knocking him out cold. With things finally settling, Aya hands her card over to Finn and asks if the guy who helped was Chris. Finn, relieved, turns to Chris, expecting some kind of friendly reunion. Instead, Chris, looking dead serious, pulls out a gun and aims it at Finn. Finn, always the clueless one, assumes Chris wants to shoot Aya and tries to tell him to stand down, but Chris was driving and thinking about his childhood. His dad, Tyler, always took care of him and his sister after their mom passed away. The man was basically a superhero without a cape, cooking, playing games, and making sure they never felt alone. One day at the mall, Chris was busy drooling over some action figures when, boom! An explosion went off. He was rushed to the hospital in a terrible state and blacked out. When he woke up, his dad was lying lifeless on the ground. The man had used X-Hand to save Chris, and in return, all Chris did was wake up and look sad. Ever since then, he had been stuck taking care of his sick sister, trying to be the smooth talker with a pretty face, as if good looks could pay bills. Now he sees X-Blind as his big chance to do what his dad did, but knowing him, he'll probably just make everything worse. Meanwhile, Finn wakes up back in Pinochle and sees Bernard. Before Finn could even get a word out, Leo storms in like an action hero and grabs him by the shirt, demanding to know where Chris is and what his plan is. Finn, clueless as ever, says he has no idea. Bernard has to step in before Leo chokes Finn out. They explain that Aya reached out and told them Chris knocked both of them out and then ran off with the 5 of Spades card. Leo, still mad, says Chris is officially kicked out of High Card and is now wanted by the president. Finn suggests they find Chris and fix the problem themselves, but Leo shuts that down. He's joining Wendy and VJ as personal security for the king and prince. They've been given strict orders not to investigate Chris, and Finn's card is being confiscated for a while. Leo drops one last bomb. Owen, the president's personal yes man, will be handling the investigation. Basically, Chris is doomed. Somewhere in a dark, sketchy tunnel, Ban is hyping up his minions, probably convincing them they're in some cool villain movie. He sends them off on a mission, and they run into the darkness like they actually know what they're doing. Chelsea arrives at a parking lot and Chris, our professional troublemaker, walks up to her. She hands him the package he requested and immediately starts questioning him because the police showed up at her job. Chris, in his usual smooth talker fashion, tells her it's nothing to worry about and starts changing his clothes like they're at a fashion show. Chelsea notices the scars on his back and decides enough is enough. She pulls out her card to force him to talk, but before she could do anything, Chris grabs her waist and kisses her like he's in some cheesy romance movie. He tells her she looks more attractive when she isn't talking. Chelsea, proving she has taste, slaps him immediately. He takes the package and checks out the cards and other items inside. As he walks away, the rookie detective and some officers stop him. Before the detective could even say something, another officer whips out a gun and claims he's following Brass's orders. Without warning, he starts shooting, but Chris, being Chris, dodges everything like he's in the Matrix. Before he can even react, a woman from the Klondike Mafia takes down all the officers and tells Chris to leave. Plot twist of the century. Back in Pinnacle, Finn is chilling alone when there's a knock on the door. He opens it to see Lindsay, who hands him a letter and a check from his mentor. Finn starts blaming himself for being at the orphanage that night, but Lindsay stops him. He apologizes for telling Finn not to come back before, saying it was hard to watch him leave, but that he's proud of him now. That's when Finn finally understands what Chris told him on the train, not that understanding Chris has ever helped anyone. Lindsay tells Finn he can always come back, and Pinnacle is also his home now. Finn feels all warm inside and says he likes being in Pinnacle. Lindsay asks if Finn considers Chris family too. Finn, with his usual delayed brain process, suddenly remembers Chris's sick sister and realizes what Chris is trying to do. Like an Olympic sprinter, he runs off thinking he can catch up to Chris on foot. Spoiler, he can't. At the palace, Leo is tense, probably wishing he could punch Chris in the face. But forget about enjoying the scenery because a castle is under full-blown attack. Without hesitation, Leo and his team jump into action, finally some real heroes doing hero stuff. Meanwhile, the rookie detective is driving Chelsea to the station, explaining that weird things have been happening and they need Chris for questioning. Finn arrives at the hospital, but guess what? He's too late. Michael's bed is empty and a card is left behind with a number. He calls and Chris answers. Chris explains everything and says he needs to save his sister. He tells Finn to use the money he left behind to rebuild the orphanage and go home to his family. Finn, suddenly developing a backbone, tells Chris that his family isn't just his sister, but also his high-card teammates. They all want him back. It's a touching moment, but Chris, being the stubborn idiot he is, already made up his mind. He drives off, staring out the window like a dramatic movie character, and then out of nowhere, a sniper takes a shot at him. But surprise, surprise, Chris already activated his card so he doesn't die. Theodore's assistant, who apparently moonlights as an assassin, tells Finn that he just disobeyed a direct order from the president and is now fired. As High Card fight the bandits to protect the king and princes, they're worried about what Chris is up to. Leo is about to give orders, but his dad, Theodore, interrupts and tells them to continue guarding the royals' chamber so they focus. Finn tackles Theodore's assistant, asking why he's trying to shoot Chris, but he said he's following orders because using X-Hand is prohibited. Ignoring the warning, he opened the door and a bouncer hit his head on the wall. Determined to heal his sister, Chris keeps driving but encounters some police on the road. As the rookie detective gets to the hospital, she sees two men carrying Finn out and hurriedly goes to stop them. Initially, they refused to let him go, but after she threatened them, they released Finn, who used that as an opportunity to uncuff himself and steal the detective's keys. He called it an extra-legal measure and drove away with her car. As the men shot at him, the detective stole their keys and called it the same thing before driving away. Chris showed the cops some ID and said Michelle was his girlfriend sleeping in the car. The cop wanted to wake her up for questioning, but Chris seductively distracted her, then she let them go. Before he could get in the car, another officer stopped him and said he matches the description that was needed, and as they wanted to search him, there was rubble and a cloud of dust rose up. When the air cleared, Chris saw a hole in the ground and Ban Klondike standing on the opposite side. Ban lets Chris know that he supports what he is doing because he feels their power should be used as they see fit and not controlled. Finn and Chelsea are trying to figure out where Chris is headed, and Chelsea remembers he said he has a date. Finn realizes that's what he said the first time he was taking Michelle out, and then they remember that Chris told Michelle that he would take her on the Ferris wheel, which means they're definitely headed to the park. Bernard overheard them via the microphone he hid in Finn's jacket and interrupted. He asked Finn if he's ready to face the consequences of his actions, and Finn said he is. Along the road, Finn encountered the Klondike woman and she sent his car flying. Once again, he got out of the explosion alive, and as the woman sent rocks flying his way, Chelsea grabbed him and ran away. Then she jumped over a fence, pulling Finn along, but unfortunately a rock grazed her thigh. They got away, but Chelsea was bleeding, so Finn had to go without her. Bernard then passed the information to Leo. Theodore told Leo not to go after Chris because of their relationship, but this got Finn very angry, so he uses his power to materialize rocket launchers that took out all the bandits. He then barged into the room his dad and the royals were supposed to be in, but no one was there. His dad then told him that he's bought enough time for them, he was used as a decoy all along. Leo then immediately mobilized his team. Simultaneously, Chris and his sister got to the park. As Finn ran through the city, the Klondike woman chased and caught up to him. She was about to drop a car on him. Love P sliced the car, saving him. Bernard then pulled up in a car and picked Finn. Love P then started to face the woman head on. They kept on fighting and destroying the environment for a while, then the detective tried to stop them by threatening to shoot, but obviously they ignored her. Captain Young walked up and told her that her gun isn't for show, then he shot the Klondike woman, but she blocked it, creating an opening which Love P used to slash her. Love P was feeling so ecstatic as usual, and then the captain shot a sign which landed on her head, knocking her out. Such a show off. Chris laid Michelle down on his lap inside the Ferris wheel carriage, saying his final words to her before sacrificing his life for her. Then he played the X hand, emitting a very bright light, which made Finn and the team know that he's already playing the cards. As there's no quicker way to get to Chris, Finn counts on Leo, who then uses all the cash in the truck to build a road across the city directly to the park. After a while, Leo ran out of cash and the road ended, but Bernard didn't stop driving. He gave Finn his card and drove off the road. Finn jumped out of the car and aimed his gun directly at Chris, who was still far from them. With the power of his card, he shot straight, hitting one of the cards, therefore stopping the X-hand process. Chris then saw Michelle open her eyes, but he passed out before he could talk. He woke up in a hospital bed and saw Finn, but he immediately asked of his sister. Then VJ opened the curtain, showing him that his sister was doing fine right beside him. They praised Finn for removing one card from the 4 that was used for X-hand because that's what saved Chris's life. Bernard updated Theodore about the situation of the city. He also told him about Chris's and Michelle's recovery before they decided on Chris's punishment. After resuming work, Chris is surprised to realize that he is now Finn's junior. He was demoted to the bottom of the hierarchy. We've crawled to the end of this gamble, but hit the like and subscribe button and maybe, just maybe, we'll find out who this full black armored man is and what he wants with this Klondike woman. Also, let us know if you think this anime deserves a second season. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click on this one right here to start the most legendary binge session known to man. Also, if you want to see the full plot-filled scenes, then make sure to subscribe to our Patreon. Link will be in the description below.